Imagine for a moment that it's January of 1999. All everyone's talking about is the news of President Clinton's impeachment trial. You've Got Mail dominates the box office, and HBO has just premiered a new show called The Sopranos. But that's not what you're focused on. Instead, your eyes are glued to the TV, tuned into Kids WB, because a brand new show is about to air. It's not just any show though, it's a sequel to your favourite cartoon, the one you watched religiously for 7 years. And then it begins. It's Batman, but different. Just from the opening moments of the now legendary intro sequence, your mind is completely blown. You've just watched, for the very first time, Batman Beyond. I have a lot of personal nostalgia for Batman Beyond, as someone that grew up during the superhero animation boom of the 1990s and discovered many of my favourite heroes through their cartoons. I remember being completely captivated by this show. Beyond, or Batman of the Future as it was called here in the UK, was almost inconceivable to my young mind. It was Batman, a character I'd grown to love from watching Batman the Animated Series, but only just. I hadn't read many comics, if any, at this point in my life, but even then I knew that this was something entirely different, something bold. It's hard to understate how much of a gamble Batman Beyond was when it first debuted. Created as the follow-up to two hugely successful shows that ran from 1992 to 1999 and quickly became accepted as both era-defining for children's animation and a near-definitive take on the Caped Crusader, it was a difficult task for any Batman cartoon to live up to the precedent that Batman the Animated Series set. But this wasn't even a series that was going to play it safe. This was a Batman show set in the far future, with a brand new protagonist, tons of new villains, and no comic book precedent in which to base its stories from. Fans could easily reject this unique take on The Dark Knight, and yet it was a huge success, airing for 3 seasons and a total of 52 episodes, as well as an exceptional direct-to-video film. Beyond captured the hearts and minds of a generation, recontextualized the idea of who and what Batman is, and gave fans an all-new character to love in Terry McGinnis. This series was a cornerstone of my youth and my journey into superheroes. Even now as an adult, I'm still captivated by its existence and the bold risks that creators Bruce Timm, Paul Dini and Alan Burnett took to give us one of my all-time favourite iterations of The Dark Knight. So in this video, I want to explore the history behind Batman Beyond, discuss why the show was first created and the process of how it came to be, and try to assess its legacy some 20 years later, and consider how it redefined everything fans knew about Batman. Before we continue though, just a quick reminder to leave a like on this video if you enjoy it, and subscribe to Owen Likes Comics so you don't miss out on any future videos. To understand what makes Batman Beyond so significant, we must first examine the story behind its creation. Batman has had a long and storied history with television, dating back to the iconic 1960s TV series starring Adam West and Burt Ward, which aired on ABC from January of 1966 to March of 1968. After the show's cancellation, Batman would play a major role in the Hanna-Barbera produced Super Friends cartoons that aired between 1973 and 1986. In 1989, Tim Burton's live-action Batman film was released, which not only reintroduced general audiences to a darker, more serious portrayal of the Caped Crusader, but it also ignited a new era of interest in the character. As a result of the film's success, a new animated TV series was commissioned by Warner Brothers. Produced by Bruce Timm and Eric Radomski, Batman the Animated Series was designed to capitalise off the success of Burton's films and introduce viewers to the vast Batman lore. 85 episodes would air throughout the show's initial 3-year run, with Batman the Animated Series becoming a massive success, winning no shortage of awards and firmly cementing itself amongst the fanbase as a quintessential take on DC's Dark Knight. Batman the Animated Series truly became a phenomenon, and its success led to not just the development of a theatrically released film, but also a sequel series upon its conclusion. The New Batman Adventures effectively picked up where the previous show left off, and began airing in September of 1997. Much of the original show's creative team, namely co-creator Bruce Timm and writers Paul Dini, Rich Fogel and Alan Burnett, all returned, as did its iconic voice cast, with the legendary Kevin Conroy once again bringing Bruce Wayne to life. While the New Batman Adventures did see some changes, most notably in the visual look of the series, it still proved to be a huge hit, and helped Warner Bros. Animation launch their ambitious interconnected universe, with this series crossing over with the recently premiered Superman the Animated Series. However, by 1998, the studio began to consider what would come after the New Batman Adventures. Warner Bros. Was happy with the quality and positive reception of this show, but they also felt like it was time to try something different with the Batman IP. In a 1999 interview, Paul Dini recalls attending a meeting with the studio where the first discussions of Batman Beyond took place. He recalls,
"About this time last year, we were meeting with the WB people. We had brought the animated Batman show to the kids' WB with new episodes and a new look that proved to be very popular. The WB wanted to find ways of expanding the appeal of Batman to include not only just old fans who wanted to see the show again, but a new audience of kids who were less familiar with it. They were looking for ways to kind of spin Batman off and do another take on the concept. Rather than just do more episodes of the old show, they just wanted a completely fresh take. Ideas were thrown back and forth until everyone agreed on one concept, looking at the idea of Batman sometime in the next century. At a midpoint of the next 100 years, what has happened to the idea of Batman? We decided to tell the story from a teenager's point of view, somebody who basically stumbles upon the Batman legacy and is chosen by fate and his own sheer determination to be the next Batman."
Having commissioned two shows that were fairly straightforward adaptations of the Batman character, Warner Bros. Felt it was now time to spread the hero's proverbial wings and try something truly unique. The idea came to reimagine Batman in the future and completely rebuild the hero's status quo based around this premise. Now, while comics like Frank Miller's The Dark Knight Returns had shown readers what an older, more grizzled Batman could be like decades after his present-day adventures, Dini, Timm and Burnett's pitch was far more inspired by cyberpunk films such as Blade Runner and Akira, as well as Marvel's Spider-Man 2099 comics. This concept would be a radical departure from any version of Batman fans had grown accustomed to, especially the one featured in Batman the Animated Series and the New Batman Adventures. But this new show was to be a continuation of those cartoons, featuring an older version of that same Bruce Wayne, still voiced by Kevin Conroy, and taking place within the now established DC animated universe. As such, the team behind Beyond had to create the character that would take up the mantle of the Caped Crusader, establish the futuristic world he existed in, and also create a clear link and continuity between this series and its predecessors. In an interview with Toonado, Bruce Timm discussed the creative process behind Beyond, stating that,
"What we tried to avoid was the trap of saying, here's Joker 2000, here's Two-Face 2000. There was actually pressure on us to do that, because the studio thought that would be the way for kids to hook into the show. But we wanted to do something fresh. We wanted to come up with villains who seemed like Batman villains, but were completely new. The closest thing we have to pre-existing characters is an anarchist bike gang called the Jokers, who kinda base their looks on the old, long-dead Joker. So we avoided that trap, as well as dealing with all the supporting characters. Bruce Wayne could have imported Alfred's memory into the computer, and that's how Alfred survives. Or we could have said Dick Grayson is now this or that. The only person from the old cast who kind of shows up again, besides Bruce Wayne, is Barbara Gordon, who becomes Commissioner Gordon. That was too neat a concept to pass up.
With the premise fully decided upon and an internal mandate set to focus on developing new corners of Batman's world, Beyond was developed throughout much of 1998. Seeking to capitalise on the changing trends of TV audiences, this show would introduce a new younger protagonist that dons the iconic cape and cowl. This Batman would be a young adult, dealing with interpersonal drama with friends, family and relationships, as well as being the protector of this new look Gotham. After Timm, Dini and Burnett finalised their concept, Batman Beyond was approved by Warner Bros. Head of Programming Jamie Kellner. As the new Batman Adventures one and only season concluded, news and advertisements began to appear hyping up this all-new cartoon, as viewers scrambled to make sense of this daring new take on the Dark Knight. And then finally, on the 10th of January 1999, the highly anticipated two-part premiere, Rebirth, aired across the United States. And over the next hour, an entire generation of viewers were transported to the exciting world of Neo Gotham as they witnessed the origin of an all-new Batman. But before we continue, I just want to take a second and let you know that this video and every video on the channel is made possible thanks to my supporters over on Patreon. If you'd like to watch every video I make several days early, get exclusive behind the scenes updates, and a bonus monthly podcast where I deep dive on the topics of every main video for over an hour with a special guest, consider signing up on Patreon at the link in the description or in the pinned comment. As you might know, earlier this year I transitioned to working on Owen Likes Comics full time, and the support I receive on Patreon goes a long way in ensuring that I can continue to work on the channel full time for the future. So if you enjoy the videos and you want to help support me in any way you can, Patreon is the best way to do it. As I said, I will leave links in the description and the pinned comment, so please do at least head over there and check out what's on offer. But anyway, let's get back to the video. As I was thinking about the history and the origin of Batman Beyond, as well as how it changes and evolves the concept of the Dark Knight, I wanted to get a second opinion and talk to an expert on the matter. So I sat down with James from Watchtower Database to discuss his memories of the show and what Batman Beyond symbolises to him.
I had definitely caught a handful of Batman the Animated Series episodes on TV as a kid, like Cartoon Network reruns of them, so not the original broadcast of any of them. By the time BTAS was completely over, I was 6, I think, or maybe no, 5. So anyway, but just the point where I was like, I wasn't seeking that out. No one was showing it to me on purpose, that kind of thing. But I would catch, like, I have a specific memory of watching Feet of Clay at my grandma's house, and just being so thrown off and uncomfortable with Clayface at the very end of the part 1. He's in his car, like, melting out of the door, and he's like, his friend is there going like, Matt, like, what's going on? What happened to you? All this stuff. And it was just like such a visceral, oh my God, what is it? Like, it's, 8 p.m. or something, but that's my bedtime at the time. So I'm like, oh God, I have to go to bed after this. This isn't okay. But just a couple things like that where I would see that every once in a while, but I didn't actually end up watching New Batman Adventures or Superman until years and years later. We were talking before we started recording about, I don't think I saw those shows until after Batman Beyond. So it was like, I was aware of all that stuff and the basics of the lore of Batman the Animated Series and stuff like that. But besides the handful of episodes I had on tape or I'd see on TV or whatever, it was mostly Batman Beyond that started me into the actual, okay, I will sit down, I will watch this, I will tape every episode, all that kind of stuff. So yeah.
That's really interesting. It's kind of similar time to me where it's like, I don't remember the order in which I watched these, but I remember having VHSs of Return of the Joker and the World's Finest episode from Superman the Animated Series. It's kind of collected as the
Batman Superman movie. Yeah, yes. I had that tape as well. I had Mask of the Phantasm. There were ones that I did own that I'd watch repeatedly, but yeah, it wasn't until Rebirth that we're gonna get into came out that was my first, like, okay, I am like, there was a little QuickTime file you could download on that Kids WB site that was just a scene from Rebirth of the Jokers chasing Terry on their motorcycles up to Wayne Manor, and it stopped at the, like, leave him alone and get off my property moment. And that was such a cliffhanger to me. It took like 3 hours to download this teeny tiny QuickTime file off the website, and then I watched it like 1,000,000 times, just so excited for this. Yeah.
That's so interesting. So when you first watched Beyond, I imagine you obviously had some familiarity with who Batman is. Any kind of child of the 90s did. And obviously, if you'd seen episodes and had an awareness of the previous show, I imagine you had an expectation of what you would expect from a Batman cartoon. And one of the things I'm looking at in this video is how Beyond is not any of that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what makes it so interesting. It is so... It's such a departure from the kind of classic Batman status quo and a mythos, and it's such a reinvention, both from kind of what had come before in Batman the Animated Series and the New Batman Adventures, and also just any Batman comic ever published by that time. So when you watch the show, and obviously kind of looking at it from a child's perspective, did you know that you were kind of witnessing something that was quite different?
I don't think in the way that it didn't have the gravitas of what was really happening because it came out. I was 8 years old, and I rented the Rebirth, Batman Beyond the movie tape from Blockbuster or whatever. And I remember I watched it with my grandparents the first time I watched it. In the opening scene where we have Bruce Wayne pull the gun on the guy, and it's this huge deal that he would never do such a thing and all this kind of thing. I didn't even catch that that's what was happening. I'm just watching a cool fight scene or whatever. That didn't click for me that, oh, this is really bad. This is the worst possible thing that could happen. This is the end of Batman or whatever. And I remember my grandpa being like, well, what's so bad? What's going on or whatever? And my grandma, who was just very glued to the TV for whatever reason, she never cared about this kind of stuff, but she was super interested in what was happening. And she was like, oh, Batman doesn't use guns. And he just used a gun. And then it clicked for me, and I was like, oh, you're right. Because not having watched a lot of this stuff before that bit of Batman's rules or whatever hadn't really sunk in with me as a person yet. And so having that explained to me by people that I didn't really think gave a crap about these things was like, oh, this must be a huge deal.
Yeah, that's it. If my kind of grandparents are like, holy shit, this must be something big.
Yeah.
While I do think the entire 3-season run of Batman Beyond is worthy of analysis, to determine how the show cemented itself as a beloved new take on the Gothic hero, I want to focus initially on the 2-part premiere, Rebirth. In many ways, Rebirth perfectly encapsulates Beyond's strengths, setting out this ambitious status quo and remixing classic Batman lore in a truly enthralling way. Written by Alan Burnett, Paul Dini and Stan Berkowitz, and directed by Kurt Gieder, these 2 episodes serve as perhaps the best attempt to reboot or reimagine the Caped Crusader, while still retaining much of his previous continuity. The episode starts with a prologue set 20 years after the end of the New Batman Adventures. Here, a group of criminals hold a woman hostage, as news reports that Wayne Enterprise is set to be taken over by billionaire Derek Powers. As the kidnappers await their ransom demands, a familiar face enters the scene, as Batman, now wearing a sleek all-black costume, begins to incapacitate the thugs one by one. As Bruce makes his way through the warehouse, he finds the hostage and attempts to rescue her, but he's attacked from behind by one of the kidnappers. Surprisingly, this criminal manages to overpower the Dark Knight, as Bruce suffers a mild heart attack in the commotion. Panicked and realizing he's in grave danger, Batman grabs a nearby weapon and holds it at the enemy, as realization slowly sinks in that Bruce is actually holding a gun. The kidnapper flees the scene before Batman can pull the trigger, but our hero is immediately overwhelmed with guilt, realizing that in a momentary lapse of judgment and in pure desperation, he's betrayed everything that he once stood for. As the police arrive and rescue the hostage, Bruce returns to the cave, where he places his suit in a glass case and utters 2 somber words: never again. The legend of Batman, as we knew it, has come to a tragic end. After this gripping prologue, the now iconic title sequence plays for the first time. Animated by Darwyn Cooke, writer of seminal comics like Ego and The New Frontier, it immediately sets the tone for what is about to come, as the series jumps forward another 2 decades and drops us in the futuristic world of Neo Gotham and into the life of our new protagonist, Terry McGinnis. We learn that Terry's parents have separated and he now lives with his father, and that the two struggle to maintain a relationship with one another. After a heated argument with his dad, Terry leaves and meets up with his girlfriend Dana at a nightclub, where it's attacked by a gang of thugs dressed like the Joker. Terry is able to escape but is chased by the Joker gang, eventually making it to a secluded and private road, where they're met by an elderly man revealed to be Bruce Wayne. Bruce and Terry manage to fight off the Jokers before Terry is taken inside to Wayne Manor, where he accidentally discovers the Batcave until Bruce catches him and kicks him out. As he returns home, Terry discovers a shocking sight, as the building has been vandalised by the Jokers and his father has been killed. After being comforted by his mother and younger brother, Terry moves in with them and in the process discovers files belonging to his father that reveal that Derek Powers has been committing illegal experiments on humans. Now believing that Powers had his father killed to cover this up, Terry swears revenge and returns to Wayne Manor for help. But after Bruce refuses, Terry breaks in the night and steals the Batsuit, using it to confront Powers and get retribution. Using this high-tech costume, Terry is able to spy on a meeting with Derek Powers, where he's explaining the nature of his experiment before Bruce appears in his ear and shuts off the suit's power. Terry pleads with Bruce until the suit is reactivated, with the former Dark Knight coordinating Terry's attacks and explaining how to use its various gadgets and capabilities. Terry manages to fight off the police and Powers' private security, before coming face to face with the man himself. It's during this fight that Powers is exposed to the same chemicals that he used on the subjects, seemingly killing him in the process. With Powers believed to be dead, Terry returns home. The next day, he wakes up to find Bruce Wayne sat in his living room, who offers him a job as an assistant and bestows him the Batman mantle. The two men shake hands as the episode ends with the reveal that Derek Powers is still alive, his body now fully radioactive, and being transformed into the show's main antagonist, Blight. This pilot introduced much of Beyond's overarching premise and status quo, as well as laid out Terry's character, motivation, and relationship to Bruce Wayne. His origin story, which combines aspects of Peter Parker's personal tragedy with Scott Lang's stealing of the Ant-Man costume, charts a bold new direction for the Batman status quo, and lays the groundwork for a captivating new series that will reimagine each corner of Batman's mythos. Throughout Season 1, several other notable characters and plot points would be introduced. For example, in Episode 2, we get the first appearance of the shape-shifting mercenary Ink, while a futuristic take on Spellbinder makes his DCAU debut in Episode 10. Interestingly, Episode 5 showcases one of the few original Batman villains that would reappear in Beyond, when Mr. Freeze is revived by Blight, hoping he can reverse his transformation. The initial season of Batman Beyond would run for 13 episodes and conclude with the finale Ascension, which sees Derek Powers' condition worsen, resulting in him recruiting his son Paxton to take over the company board. During the meeting though, in which Bruce Wayne attends, Powers loses control and reveals himself to be Blight, with Bruce distracting him long enough for Terry to arrive as Batman. Terry is able to overpower and apprehend the villain, and Blight is taken away by Paxton's security. Later on, Bruce and Terry reconcile with the fact that not only did Powers orchestrate the death of Terry's father, but their initial encounter in Rebirth led to Powers becoming this monstrous foe. Bruce is shaken by the notion that Terry was responsible for creating his own enemy, while Terry seems unfazed and shows little remorse for Blight's current state. It's later revealed that Paxton is holding his father hostage on an abandoned nuclear submarine, with Terry locating him in order to seek his final revenge. As he confronts Powers though, Paxton arrives and reveals his true intentions, activating a device that neutralizes Blight's powers and slowly drains them until it kills him. Seeing Paxton so willing to take his father's life, Terry has a moment of realization and orders Paxton to show mercy. It's during this exchange that Powers breaks free and releases a huge blast of energy, sinking the submarine in the process. Batman is able to rescue Paxton, but his father is seemingly killed in the blast. The episode ends with Paxton consolidating control of the merged Wayne Powers company as Batman appears in his office and delivers a stern warning. Terry proclaims that he will bring Paxton to justice and that Gotham is once again under the protection of the legendary Batman. After running for 3 seasons and a total of 52 episodes, Batman Beyond concluded in December of 2001. In the show's latter 2 seasons, viewers saw Terry McGinnis's continued evolution into the Dark Knight, alongside his growing relationship with Bruce Wayne, and encountering several foes both familiar and brand new. Season 3 in particular would enhance the show's ties to the larger DC animated universe, with the 2-part episode The Call. Here, Terry and Bruce would encounter a new futuristic version of the Justice League, and would mark the JLA's formal debut in the DCAU, with their standalone animated series set to premiere the following year. Towards the end of Season 3's run, a feature-length Beyond film would be released, in the form of Batman Beyond: Return of the Joker. Serving as both a climax to Beyond and a finale to the new Batman adventures, this movie bridged the gap between past and present, detailing Terry and Bruce's battle with a revived Joker in the future, and telling the long-lost story of the villain's apparent death after the abduction of Tim Drake. Return of the Joker was incredibly well received and remains a fan favourite for many, and proved to be one of the darkest and most somber moments in the entire DCAU. It should be highlighted though that Season 3 concluded in a somewhat underwhelming fashion. The final 2 episodes, Countdown and Unmasked, not only aired 8 months apart, but didn't feel like a satisfying ending to this dearly beloved cartoon. Instead, a more fitting and definitive ending to Batman Beyond's story came in July of 2005, in the Justice League Unlimited finale, Epilogue. This episode, which serves as a swan song to not only JLU but the entire DC animated universe, we find an older Terry McGinnis confronting Amanda Waller, seeking answers for a mysterious part in his past. Over the next 22 minutes, it's revealed that Bruce is suffering from kidney failure, and in an effort to save his mentor, Terry discovers that he and Bruce are a perfect match. Terry is shocked and ultimately runs a DNA test, which reveals that Bruce is in fact his biological father. Terry believes Bruce orchestrated this to ensure a successor to the Batmantle. However, Waller chooses to tell him a story about Ace, a young girl with extraordinary powers recruited into the villainous Royal Flush Gang. Ace struggled to control her powers and eventually discovered a brain aneurysm that was slowly killing her. Waller tells Terry that Bruce volunteered to use a Cadmus weapon to euthanize the young girl, only to instead sit and comfort her in her final moments. Waller explains that this moment made her realise that despite his stoicism, Batman's greatest strength was his compassion and his humanity. It made her realise that the world would always need a Batman, legacy and memory of both Batman and Bruce Wayne on his shoulders. Although Batman Beyond came to an end in December of 2001, the character has maintained a strong place within the DC universe, transcending the world of television and making the jump onto the printed page. 2005's Superman Batman issue 22 marked Terry's first appearance in a mainline DC comic, appearing in a story where Bizarro is transported to an alternate Earth where he encounters Batman Beyond. Likewise, Superman Batman Annual No. 4 from June 2010 formally returns readers to the DC animated universe, as we catch up with Terry and the older Superman introduced in Beyond's final season. Following DC's New 52 reboot in 2011 though, a new in-continuity version of Terry would be introduced, as part of the 2014 crossover event, Future's End. This story sees Terry, some 35 years into the future, return to the present-day DC universe to try and avert a disastrous war between itself and Earth 2. More recently though, numerous Batman comics starring Terry and featuring other Batman characters adopting the mantle have been published, such as the 2015 series, which saw Tim Drake become Batman Beyond after Terry's death. After rewatching and reconsidering much of Beyond when making this video, I think the series holds a deeply fascinating place within the history of both Batman and DC television. A phrase I keep coming back to in my mind is, "You probably couldn't make this today." And in a way, I think that's true. Considering the massive successes of Batman the Animated Series and the new Batman Adventures, it's honestly astounding that DC and Warner Brothers were so willing for those shows' creators to remix the Dark Knight's lore and continuity in such a massive way. Beyond tears down so much of what we expect from a Batman cartoon and delivers something truly distinctive and decisively different. And not only is that incredibly bold, but it's a huge part of what made this series so popular to so many fans. In a world of brand synergy between comics, films and animation, and studios maintaining a firmer grip on their multi-billion-dollar IPs, I'm genuinely not sure if a pitch like Batman Beyond would have been greenlit today, but the fact it was back in the late 1990s, and the fact it evolved into such a tremendous TV show, is something worth celebrating. Virtually every episode is dripping with creativity and imagination, eagerly reworking the various aspects of Batman's mythos into something unquestionably new and different. During my conversation with James from Watchtower Database, we discussed this notion of legacy and how Beyond helped us both fall in love with the Batman character. But thinking about Beyond specifically, like looking back at it now, like 2 and a bit decades after it's aired, as two people that was very much part of our gateway into these characters, what are your like present day feelings on the show and its role in kind of reinventing Batman for a new audience and a new generation? And what do you think if you had to summarize it, what do you think the legacy of Batman Beyond is?
It's such an original take on Batman and that world and anything at all. It's like you could make whatever cartoon and put Batman on it, but this one just happens to be what they did. Like there's not a lot of recurring, Mr. Freeze comes back, Joker comes back. There's little things here and there, but it's not just like, I mean, they've even talked about this in behind the scenes stuff of like, they didn't want to just do like, it's the Batman Rogues Gallery, but they're 40 years older now or whatever. Yeah. So that's the thing though, is I think like the takeaway from the show is that you can still do really cool stuff with these characters in this world by just flying by the seat of your pants and just like it works out sometimes. And then I think that's made my take on that subject without me realizing it, since Batman Beyond was kind of the first time I paid attention to these shows. There wasn't Batman Beyond before Batman Beyond. So there was no way to go, well, that's not how Blight would be. That's not how Ink would be. Everyone's new, basically. It is something you can, when you think of Batman, like Batman Beyond, Terry McGinnis is like another like core version of Batman now. Like we've had many different Batman replacements or whatever over the years, like Azrael and that kind of stuff that never really like stuck around afterward. They had their little event, their moment in history, and then they'll make appearances every once in a while, but there's not a lot of, like we continue to have Batman Beyond comic series over and over again. Almost every time they'll reboot it as a new continuity, but it's still really cool to see here's more Batman Beyond. Like, I don't know who was asking for that, but apparently wallets were talking when the previous one was happening.
Still a demand for that character, that people still want to read him. And even if it's different versions, still want some iteration of Beyond. It shows that take on Batman has kind of stuck with people and has lasted.
Yeah.
Overall, though, Batman Beyond is both a brilliant show that celebrates the history of the Dark Knight while simultaneously moving his mythos forward. And for me personally, it's an absolute cornerstone of my journey into discovering this incredible character. And now that Terry McGinnis has entrenched himself as a fan favourite and an accepted alternate Batman, I do hope we see a resurgence of this character on either the big or small screen, alongside the continued volumes of comics that either continue or seek to reimagine his adventures. But in whatever medium we next see him soar, I sincerely hope that there is a place for Batman Beyond in the future, and we don't forget how this unexpected series reimagined DC's icon for a whole new generation. Hey everyone, thank you so much for watching today's video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please make sure to leave a like on this video and leave a comment down below as well. Let me know your thoughts on everything we discussed in today's video. I can't wait to hear your thoughts as always. If you're new to Owen Likes Comics, please make sure to hit the subscribe button and the notification bell so you don't miss out on any future videos. And if you enjoyed this and you want some more, there should be some other videos on screen right now that you might also enjoy. I want to give a big special thank you and a shout out to James from Watchtower Database for joining me on this video. I will leave links to James's channels and his socials in the description, and there is a full hour-plus long conversation between us over on my Patreon right now. If you would like access to that as well as behind the scenes updates and early access to all of my videos, head to patreon.com/OwenLikesComics, or if you just want to support me and just want to follow and keep up with what I'm up to, follow me on Twitter and Instagram just at OwenLikesComics. But that's all for this video. Again, thank you all so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and hopefully I will see you next time. But until then, take care and keep reading.